Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Enterprise Storage as Agile as your VMware Cloud. We're going to get started here in just a minute. I see people are still logging in, and I want to give them just a few minutes, a few seconds to get in here and get with us. So hang on for just about another 20, 30 seconds, and we're going to get rolling. Thank you. Okay, everyone, hello, and welcome to the webinar, Enterprise Storage as Agile as your VMware Cloud. My name is Greg Newman. I am here today with Mark Levitt.
Good morning.
And good morning, Mark. Thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. We are going to be talking today all about the new-ish VMware Cloud on AWS. I want to make sure we get that name right, Mark? That's a bit of a mouthful.
It is that.
and some of its wonderful attributes, and of course some of its limitations. And we'll share with you some strategies for how we believe you can overcome some of those limitations and get yourself some additional features and functionality. So again, thanks for being with us. This is going to be something that will take us about a half an hour. We're going to go through topics here you'll see on the agenda slide. We have a quick overview of VMware Cloud on AWS. We're going to talk about a more integrated approach, and you'll see what that means when we get to those slides. And then we'll talk in a little bit more detail about Zadara and the experience that our users have with Zadara, a fully managed experience. And then a little bit about controlling your data. And I think that word control is important. You're going to see that pop up a few times here throughout the course of this presentation. We know, of course, we live in a world where our data resides in many places, and we're going to talk about that and the idea of having greater control, greater flexibility, and agility is, I'm sure, something that's on all of our minds. So with that, let's get started. You know what I'm going to do, Mark? I'm going to put a poll together real quick. I'm curious. I know we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
How many people are, in fact, using VMware Cloud on AWS? So for everybody on the webinar, please take a moment and fill out, make an answer, please, to this. I see people are doing it. Thank you. We will go ahead in about 15 seconds. I'm going to pull this poll down, and we'll take a look at the answers. This will help shape what we talk about a bit on today's webinar. We'll get a sense of kind of where everybody's at. And then that'll help guide our conversation, especially for Mark. He is our Senior Director of Product Marketing here, and I've asked him to join us, of course, because of his expertise and having been deep into VMware Cloud on AWS, his insights will be really valuable. All right, let's take a look at these results. Mark, I think this may jive with what we were talking about 20%, almost 20% already using it.
I'm actually surprised that it's that high. That's really good news. I know that it's very important to VMware, and they're trying to get that out for their install base to understand. And then the planning number is really interesting at 61%.
Yeah, we were.
I'd say that's a stronger response than I actually expected. I think that's really very positive.
Yeah, it is good news. I agree. I think there's been a lot of interest in VMware Cloud on AWS, and it looks like the uptake is happening too now. Well, good. I think then this, for all of you that answered that, thank you. I think you're going to find this to be a very interesting webinar. For those of you that answered no and not planning to, I think you're still going to find this to be an interesting webinar, so thanks.
Yeah. we appreciate your attention.
Exactly. Let's tell you just briefly a little bit about Zadara so you know who you're dealing with here. We are an AWS partner. We've been a technology partner for 8 years now, and we're a competency partner in a number of designations. You can see that here on the screen. Of course, storage competency, no surprise. But also we're in the marketplace, and we'll talk a little bit later about that and why that matters. It makes life very easy for you if you're interested in working with us. All right. I'd like to also, because I'm the marketing guy and I can't help myself, I want to take just a moment to explain why Zadara. Why do we exist? It's a very simple premise. We started in 2011 with the idea that the move to the cloud, the great migration to the cloud that was beginning in, let's say, 2009 or 2010, was something that we felt was going to be happening, like all great migrations, in phases or stages. And we wanted to help accelerate that. And we wanted to bring the promise of full enterprise computing and storage to a cloud model. So our reason for being and what we do and what our solutions do is we give you the control and the power of the enterprise and all the features you expect in enterprise storage, together with the agility that you come to expect in a cloud model. And as we go throughout this presentation, I think you'll see what that means. Mark, I know you and I have talked a lot about what this means, and this is the kind of phrase you can really unpack. Depending on what you're looking at, there's a lot to it.
Right, and we'll be coming back to it in the following slides and making it a little more concrete.
Well, with that, let's jump in. I think this is, Mark, this is really where you get to help us, because this slide, I think, gets to the meat very quickly of anybody who's encountered AWS, VMware on AWS, understands. Go, please tell us.
Right, so when we're looking on the left side of this, this is sort of a classical setup of VMware Cloud on AWS. And you know, the baseline I think that we have to start with here is that it's very good at what it does. It does what VMware on AWS says it does, and it does it very well. What we find is that when you want to go beyond the basics, when you want to look at sharing data between your VMware software-defined data center and, say, virtual private clouds containing AWS native VPCs and native hosts, what you'll find is that it doesn't work. There's no mechanism for that to happen, and to show that data. And let alone when you go to a case and you want to say, look at virtual private clouds out in other cloud providers, of course. In this case, we're talking about Azure, Google, and Oracle, although the list is longer than that. There is no mechanism for that to work from software-defined data center that's in AWS. What you do get is you get the on-premises connection and the hybrid, and that does work very well. The hook there is when your data, your application data, is resident within AWS, then should you choose to move it, whether you're talking about repatriation or moving to another cloud provider, or just moving bulk data around, it can get very expensive with the egress charges.
Yes, exactly. So we have a situation where VMware Cloud on AWS is really a terrific solution in many, many ways. But of course, with the customers that we work with, we see that their needs go beyond that, right? And when we took a look at VMware Cloud on AWS, we saw, I think you would say, Mark, that this maps very well to what we do and how we choose to approach it.
Yeah, it dovetails wonderfully with our value sets. And the key here is for people, it's not even if I'm going to go do a multi-cloud configuration right now. That's not the key. The key is, do you think you will in the future? And we know from research that over 80% of enterprises have a plan for multi-cloud. You need to make sure that your infrastructure is going to support that.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick look then with this next slide at how Zadara, when you put Zadara into the equation, what changes?
Well, so in this case, what we're saying is now to take control of all the clouds, to take control of your data, to basically to liberate your data from within proprietary cloud providers. Provider, I guess, is a combination of providers and vendors, and put your hands around it in a way that lets you use it in more places. So in this case, we put it in what we call a Zadara Enterprise Data Cloud, and now that data is simultaneously available within AWS, whether it's in a software-defined data center or in other AWS infrastructure, EC2 instances. It's available to within other cloud providers, and it's available to on-premises and in any combination. What this does, other than obviously providing a lot of mobility and flexibility and not letting you get stuck in a cul-de-sac, is that you can now concentrate on having all your storage in one place. So and then apply those services to your cloud, to your data cloud, means you can standardize your services, which greatly simplifies things like how you do backups, how you do disaster recovery, and controlling the location of specifically controlling the location of your data now helps a lot with regulatory and governance issues, especially in environments where that becomes very key, or where you're close to international borders.
That's a really good point, right? We see this with a lot of our customers. This comes up.
Yeah.
It may not be your first consideration when you're planning, but it's absolutely a critical one.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because a lot of these things aren't obvious at first look at how you do this. It's when you dig further into it and you realize that you want to do more than the basics that it becomes critical to understand how to get those standardized services and get location and service control of your data.
Yep. You gave me a thought. I realized that it might be a good time to ask people whether they're in fact using multiple clouds. So for everybody on the webinar, I'm launching a poll right now. Please take a quick look and let me know where you're at. I think it would be interesting to collect that and find out. We can share that with everybody here in a few seconds. I think that the research we've seen, and I know we were just talking about this yesterday, Mark, I think that was that HBR study that was provided through Google, one of our partners, and they had said it's over 80%. I know I've seen similar figures from other studies. It's really no surprise, but what's interesting about it from my perspective is that that figure has remained steady for the last year.
More than a year. I think we've really been, I mean, it's been climbing, but it's been very strong signal on that for the last 3 years.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at this poll, shall we? And let's see how everybody responded. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So more than half.
More than half are currently using multiple clouds. You know, this isn't the webinar to get into it necessarily, but what's interesting about that, and I know you see this, is that frequently multiple cloud usage comes out of a tactical decision. Something has occurred at the field level, or
different groups with specific requirements. Yeah.
And what we like to say is, let's back up and let's think strategically about our cloud usage.
Yeah, but if you just look at these numbers now, we're saying 90% either are or are planning to. So this group is really significantly ahead of the research we've been seeing.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. All right, we've got a group that's ahead of the curve. Let's take a look then a little more deeply at what we mean when we talk about an enterprise data cloud. This is, as you can see, an expanded version of the diagram we were just looking at on the last slide. And I want to start by pointing out to everybody here that you can see on the bottom. Let's build this thing from the bottom up. What are the uses? What are the functions that you perhaps would be thinking about when you're thinking about your data and data storage? Chances are you see one or more of these as something you're doing or you intend to do. And then on the top, you'll see all the various locations that you might be storing data. And there, right smack in the middle, is our enterprise data cloud, consolidating and rationalizing and streamlining. So, Mark, when you look at this and you see how we split it into two, right? We have our private storage cloud, meaning this is where we're actually storing the data, and we can talk about what kind of data we store and how all that works. But where it really gets interesting, I think, is in the integrated data services and the applications, all the things you can do with the data now that you've got it.
Yeah, that's crucial. That's key. So what we've got, I mean, just in the green, and I have to stop myself here because I always want to stand up and do this presentation.
Oh, I know, right?
It doesn't help on the webinar. But just starting in the green now, we're talking about virtual private storage array. So let's unpack that just a little bit. The 4 keywords, it's kind of a mouthful too, maybe not quite VMware Cloud on AWS, but we go long on this one. The most important word there probably is private. Mm-hmm. What we do for our storage arrays, and this is true of our file and block, which are virtual private storage arrays, and also object on the other side, is that they have every virtual array has their own resources. They have their own compute, memory, connectivity, and storage resources. So there's no sharing. That's how they're private. That's how we get consistent, guaranteed performance. And on top of that, now we add the services that make the data even more valuable. So, and this is a collection, and it is not, by no means is it exhaustive.
Right.
But the idea here is to get those services into your data cloud so that you can streamline your operations. You can simplify your run books. Basically, you can focus your staff training on a smaller set of tasks. So you can integrate antivirus into the cloud. Backup is something that should always be integrated into your data cloud. Backup and recovery, high availability, disaster recovery. I'm not going to run through the whole list. Remote office, branch office is another key one. And then we present that regardless of where your compute resources are. So you can have the same data on premises, in a service provider cloud, in a hyperscale public cloud, or any combination of that.
Yep.
And it's all protected the same way, and you use the same set of tools to protect it, to scale it, and to grow it.
Yeah, I know we're going to take a look in the next slide at a little deeper diagram of what you were talking about a moment ago. But before we get there, with regard to the private aspect, and that's key. You're exactly right. Before we get there, I want to point something out. We don't get into it too much in this slide or in this webinar, but some of these integrated data services and applications that you see featured in the blue, we achieve through partnerships with key players like McAfee for antivirus as a partner of ours.
Exactly.
And others, Veeam and Commvault, and some names that I'm sure all of our attendees will know. We're part of the ecosystem here, and that's the way it should work in technology. So let's take a quick look. I know that we want to be mindful of the time, Mark, and so let's take a minute on this slide and show people, because there's an important aspect here with regard to these storage nodes and how they're separate.
Right, and the key point here, this picks up what we're talking about, the dedicated resources. So we're just showing that in a purely diagrammatic form, that we have two VPSAs, two virtual private storage arrays, for different purposes, have different resources. And you can see what we're diagramming is that they get their own compute resources, they get their own storage resources, and then behind that we have their own memory resources and their own connectivity networking resources, so that they're not sharing. They don't have to worry about noisy neighbors. Our enterprise data cloud and our VPSA structure is architected from the beginning to support multi-tenancy.
Yeah.
And that's really important, because you can't shoehorn it in afterwards very well. So we started that from the ground up, and we have that's how we have the patent on that technology. Yeah. Beyond that, we're just using standard servers with hard disks and SSDs in different combinations depending on the storage requirement. High-speed networking, standard local data protection and RAIN and RAID, and software-defined networking to get the flexibility. And SRIOV, which is another minor mouthful, gets you the dedicated connectivity.
So that was a lot you went through.
That was a lot.
Well done.
And I did it in 2 minutes.
You did very well. I would say that because I'm the marketing guy, I want to chime in real quick and point out, you said something very important there, which is that we have a patent on this technology, and we did design it from the ground up to do exactly what you described. And I know that there have been other companies, in fact, much larger companies, that have gotten into this game recently. And I'm proud to say that nobody has been able to bring this same technology and this level of technology to the market. So we're proud that we were the leader and the first to do this, and we're proud that we continue to lead in terms of the capability that we bring to the market.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in the slide coming up on the issues around security.
Yes, that's a good point. So benefits, what do we get? Here we are, we have all of this. What do you get out of it? Well, you're going to see from this list, you get pretty much what you'd expect in any enterprise data storage system that you might be running on your premises or in any traditional storage system. And Mark, I know we were talking yesterday, snapshots, clones, remote mirroring is one example of something that we really like to point out. We know a lot of our customers take advantage of that.
Well, they do, and it's because it's so central, that the capability, especially with remote mirroring, that the capability of using that to move the data all around enterprise data cloud, and we'll talk about how extensive our site presence is as well.
So with these features and functions up on the screen, it occurred to me I want to launch another quick poll. Everybody I'm sure is familiar with the trade-offs that you need to make traditionally when you get into the cloud. I'm curious if we can get a little bit more information on what are your pain points, what trade-offs do you think are your biggest concerns? So I just put that up on the screen. Please take a moment. Tell us a little bit about. I think you can answer multiple. We're
placing side bets on how this one comes out. I think I know what the big hitter is going to be.
You do? Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what comes.
I don't want to say because I don't want to, bias the results.
Yeah, I find this.
But it's coming in the way I thought it would.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, we're watching the results now. We're going to shut this down here in a few seconds. So please chime in if you have an opinion or thoughts. And let's go ahead then and take a look at the results. And there they are, sir. What do you think, Mark? How did that turn out?
Security. When we're talking about clouds, that is almost always the number one point.
It's true.
And especially for somebody who's planning on it but hasn't done a lot of it yet.
Yeah.
But everybody's worried about security, even on premises. And so when you put it in the cloud, it becomes that much more complex to think about, especially if you think that you're not going to have total control of your data.
Yeah. And here we have cost that ranks very high also.
Sure.
We're going to talk a little bit later about that. We had a study from 451 Research that looked at the long-term costs.
Yeah.
And so we'll take a look at that. And so it's no surprise, right? Here we have performance is a byword for a lot of things, obviously,
yeah.
but we think we know what's meant by that, and that's why we put together the feature sets that we have.
Yeah, but I will put in one plug here that I don't think we're really going to hit very hard on the slides, which is, as you indicated, performance is a complex topic when you really get into it. The details matter. And our model is different than you'll get from a lot of people in that we have dedicated support personnel who are real life people who have access, who do the management and take responsibility for the health of your storage, know it very well, and are there to help you with a real voice at the end of the phone to deal with things like storage.
And I'm glad you said that because that's a huge part of our model. It is something that I know is different than what you might encounter from other providers, and it takes a couple of tellings. It takes a couple of repeats on that one to really get the sync.
It's true, but I think we've all had the experience of sitting on the end of a phone going through an automated system that makes all kinds of useless suggestions. And so I'm really, as a stakeholder here, I'm very excited that we have certain, verified storage geeks who will answer your storage problems.
Yes, yeah, it's true. It's true. So you mentioned security, and I thought we would put a slide together to talk about that because it's so important. This is a little bit more detail about what goes on. I think the key here really, excuse me, that's a bad pun.
That's a good one though. Use it. Go with it.
You do control the keys, right? This is important.
Yeah, and it's unique. So this is data, this is at rest, this is in flight, and you manage the keys. So what that says is we can't read your data even if we want to, even though if it's sitting in our data centers and we take operational responsibility for keeping it healthy, we can't read the data. And please don't lose your key because we can't help you if you do.
Exactly. And then, again, around the issue of control, here's an example of our web-based interface. Anybody who's used to dealing with software to manage a storage array is going to find our software looks really familiar.
Yeah, very comfortable.
And that's the key, really. We just, this is not about reinventing something that doesn't need reinvention. This is about packaging something into the most convenient and useful format possible. And that extends to our software interface as well. And we get a lot of positive feedbacks on it. So much praise goes to our engineers. Well done. And so,
I just want to make one point here because we talked about elastic provisioning and we touched about it earlier. But one of the other things to think about in the elasticity that we offer that is different than some of our competitors is that you can scale up and scale down transparently and seamlessly.
Mm.
And that is not something you find. A lot of people scale up, scaling down is another thing. We all know sometimes a project winds down or you don't use as much data as you think you did.
We have that all the time. We have one of our customers that hibernates data on the weekends, Harvard University. And they love the fact they can do this. Saves money and wonderful benefit.
All right, so that's a good set for the slide after this one.
Yes, it's true. Mark mentioned our approach. We stand behind our approach. We have 100% uptime guarantee. What that means is that we expect to be up 100% of the time. And if we're not, well, then we have not lived up to our promise. The good news is over the last 5 years, we have been up 5.5 nines. So we're very proud of our record, and we're very proud of the fact that it's a long-term record.
Yeah, something else, and for those of you that are into the meanings of uptime, a lot of people make a distinction in their uptime numbers between planned and unplanned outage.
Right.
This is planned or unplanned, period, end of story.
Period, end of story. Yes, thank you. That's exactly true. When we say 100%, we mean 100%. Okay, and again, being mindful of time, Mark, I know that we've galloped through a few slides, but these these issues that we've touched on are fairly straightforward, and I hope our audience understands the import of them. Another thing that we find comes up quite a bit, of course, when dealing with people in AWS is, where are you guys? What's going on with your data centers? And we are, in fact, in 16 AWS regions now. You can see them listed here on the map. We operate via direct connect, and latency is not really an issue.
Right, and the performance is the whole point of overlapping AWS's regions. Right?
Exactly.
This is the data centers across the street from AWS, figuratively speaking, to make sure that we're addressing that performance concern that we saw our attendees have.
So when you're rolling out whatever solution you might be looking at, you have the flexibility to choose where you want to deploy with AWS and with Zadara. Okay, we're gonna take a breath, and we're gonna digest this slide.
Yeah.
Because this one comes as a surprise to a lot of people, I know. We had a study from 451 Research looking at a 10-year total cost of ownership of different methods of storage. You can see from the diagram, CapEx, traditional storage, is the most expensive, probably no surprise there, and you can see the cost fluctuates depending on upgrade cycles and things like that. Now you can lease it and you can smooth things out, but you don't really save money in the long run, which is an interesting point, because it's your upfront is lower, and that actually is very helpful, but in the end you spend basically the same amount. Cloud services came in, and wow, what a difference. But as we saw from the poll earlier, Mark, total cost is a factor, something people keep in mind. And this study, I think, vindicates all of those who believe that they're spending maybe a little bit more than they expected on cloud services. We have the way we architected our storage and the flexibility that you have to choose storage media like all flash or HDD with flash cache. You get a chance to really control your costs.
Really, and line up the performance that you want. Again, we've talked about performance. That was obviously one of the second highest concern, I think, in the group. Line up your performance against your actual business requirements.
Right.
Right. I mean, all flash is great if that's what you need, but you don't always need that. And if you don't always need that, you probably don't want to have to pay for it.
Exactly. So pay for what you need, not what you don't. And that's how we find that over time, our customers can save significant amounts of money relative to other methods.
Yeah, one other point that I just want to make, I'll try and make it very brief, is when we talk about total cost, one of the costs that gets in here is the cost of overbuying storage. And that's why you see the lease lines and the CapEx, or one of the things that goes into the lease lines and the CapEx lines being high, is you traditionally buy at least 30% more than you need to give yourself room, right? So when you go to a cloud model, whether it's Zadara or through a more traditional cloud vendor, now you're much closer to buying just what you need. And Zadara is very, very good with the dynamic scale up and scale down capability, that you just pay for what you actually need. And if you wind up needing more, okay, fine, expand it.
Yeah.
If you need less, shrink it. Don't pay, again, as you said, don't pay for what you're not using.
Yep. For those of you that know us, you know that we're all over the world. You know that we work with some terrific companies and some leading brands. For those of you that don't know us, here's a quick slide. Not all of our customers are on this slide, of course, but we thought we'd put a few. And I'm sure you'll see some names you know in a variety of industries, by the way. And for those of you that wonder, gee, can Zadara handle my requirements? Chances are we've already encountered a customer that does exactly what you do, because we are in just about every major industry. We're on every major country and every major continent. All right, let's do this. I'm so proud of us, Mark. Look at what time it is.
We're doing all right.
We did well. We promised that we would stay at a good pace. So let's begin to wrap up. And here, this slide, I'd like to share with you just the highlights. And that is, of course, if you're looking for an enterprise-grade storage solution that can be agile, can be in the cloud, and can follow a cloud model, whether you deploy it on your premises, by the way, which is something that we didn't talk a lot about in this webinar,
right.
but many of our customers do, and you'd like something that's fully managed, well, we think Zadara is just the ticket, because we've managed to put together exactly that recipe, and we've been doing it for 8 years now, and it seems to work pretty darn well. We have customers that, you talked earlier about projects, right? Projects going up and down.
Yeah.
We have customers that have been with us now with multiple projects, with starting with one small project and growing, starting with one location and growing. And it's very typical, we will find, for people to start with us on one maybe it's a DevOps project, for instance, and try us out and see how it works.
Right. Well, and the very nice thing there is a very low barrier to try us out. And we encourage that everybody try us out.
Yeah, we do. And let me point that out. So no subscriptions, no long-term contracts. You can use us on, an on-demand basis, as much as you want, as little as you want. And to that end,
was that a segue?
That was
what?
Yeah, exactly. We have a 14-day free trial. We think this is a great way to try us out, obviously. And this really is a truly no commitment, no credit card required. Jump in and give us a try. And remember, this isn't about you going away and trying this on your own. We want you to reach out to us. We want you to work with us. Our storage experts are here to help guide you through everything from the setup of your virtual private storage array, through all of the features and understanding how it works, and really getting it in those 14 days, getting it to work for you in the way you were anticipating.
Right, and one of the first things that happens there, assuming that you want this, is that our storage team will, in fact, do an onboarding with you and just take you through the initial setup. Again, a real human on the end of the phone walking you through it.
Yep. Well, we are getting to the end. We hope that what you have found here has been useful and educational, and it is what you expected to learn and to hear on today's webinar.
Didn't even have to fault the dolphin video.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't have to do any vacation videos on this one. Maybe next time. For those of you that have questions, please write them into the questions panel, which is located in your control panel for the webinar. Because we did well, we have a few minutes, and we could answer some questions for those of you that might have questions. So I'll give you a moment to enter them. One of the questions that is a perennial is what we were just talking about, which is, what do you mean no contracts? What do you mean no long-term? How does that work?
Pretty much just that.
It is, yeah. The simple answer, and then it sounds a little flip, is, well, it's that easy. Just sign up. But what we've done is we've structured it in such a way that if you do choose to sign up with us on a contract, we do have some favorable pricing, and we have some ways to make this look, very attractive. But we really, from the moment we started this company, we wanted to build flexibility into the business model. And we've done that.
Yeah, and that's just the point to make. It's your choice, right? Yeah, there are discounts available if you make commitments, sure. But if you don't want to, that's okay too.
Yeah. All right, we're getting one question. Mark, this could be right up your alley. Talk to me in a little more detail about the protocols. What kind of data can I be working with here?
Pretty much any kind of data. We have the two types of virtual arrays. We have the object arrays, and we have what we call a storage array, which is the file and block piece of it. And how you interface it depends on the deployment model. If you're in a hyperscale public cloud, or you're in a service provider cloud, then you'll access that via either iSCSI in the case of block, or NFS or CIFS in the case of file, or through S3 or Swift APIs for object. If you're on premises, there are more options because there are more storage area networks that are present in data centers. So we also support, you can still use iSCSI. We do also have fiber channel support available for on-premises implementations.
Yeah. We have some more questions coming in. Let's jump into one from Roberto. Thank you, Roberto. Can Zadara Cloud storage be added to Oracle Cloud, or are there limitations to which cloud environments are used? Short answer is Oracle is a partner of ours, and we are fully integrated with Oracle Cloud. The expanded answer, so I hope that answers your question, Roberto. Thank you for asking it. The expanded answer is, in fact, we're partners with AWS, and we are partners with GCP.
Yeah, Google platforms.
And Azure.
And Oracle, and IBM also.
And thank you, and IBM. So, and Mark, as you know, we of course are in a number of co-location facilities. And
yes.
A number of parts. Equinix comes to mind. Yeah. Xterra comes to mind.
Yeah. So again, what we just to key off of your question, Roberto, what we the answer is yes to your admirably specific question, and more generally, we get to say yes to those kind of questions a whole lot more often than we say no.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's go down the list. Marcia asks, how will the connectivity of storage work, and what will be the prerequisites for low latency during data flow? Good question about that.
That is a great question, and it's a conversation that can take a lot longer than we have. Marcia, hopefully we answered part of that when we were talking about the different interface types. The lowest latency you're going to get is almost certainly in an on-premises implementation and with a fiber channel interface. That's what that's good for. For most applications, we find that the latency either over iSCSI or file services, CIFS or NFS, in our locations that are essentially adjacent to the AWS locations, the latency is very, very low. So unless you have very high performance requirements and very, very, very low latency requirements, like we're talking, sub-millisecond requirements, you're going to be fine almost no matter which way you go. But this is one of those where it's really important, and this goes back to my point about the humans involved. We have very experienced storage architects who can talk to you about your requirements before you engage, and we also have our storage experts that help you actually deploy it.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is just serious enough and complicated enough. You really want to make sure your specific requirements are understood. Yeah. And our storage experts can help.
Because some people, fast storage is going to be under 2 milliseconds, and some is going to be under 200 microseconds. We just have to understand your requirements and how to set it up the best.
We have, this is a good question. Hailong, thank you very much. Details how can you migrate virtual machines on-prem to AWS Cloud? Is VMware Cloud required?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, it is. Well, okay.
If you run VMware, right?
Yeah, if you want VMware, if you want to do it with the minimum friction, if you want to be able, at least in principle, you want to be able to migrate between your on-premises and your AWS environment and then back again, or move things around like that, hands down, the best answer is VMware Cloud on AWS. There are ways, certainly, to get your host VMs into AWS native EC2 support, but that tends to be more of a static migration that involves usually downtime for your application. Whereas in the case of using the VMware Cloud on AWS, you get to do that, with the tools you're used to with VMware, and you can do those migrations. In this case, using I think HDX. Very, very quickly and transparently.
So, there's this. Thank you. That's a good one. I'm laughing. Thank you, Tom, for the question. How can I buy stock? Yes, we'll get back to that one later. But that was funny. Thank you. We have a question about backup. This is a very popular topic. We have a lot of customers using backup.
Oh yeah, we do.
And we certainly have a lot of music.
Like all of them.
Yeah, just about. Yeah. And so we do work with a number of partners.
We do. I mean, the two that we do the most work with, they're doing that are not limited to backup, but that also most cover what we would consider a traditional backup, are Commvault and Veeam. And we have, we have one of my action items is a solution brief on those. But we have customers running both of those, and we've never had any trouble. It's just a very smooth, very easy integration, no matter how you do it. It's one of those other things, though, where we would like to get our storage architects involved in the conversation, understand what you're trying to achieve, because as with anything, there's more than one way to skin the cat. What do you want the target to be? What do you want to back up? Where do you want them? Those kind of things.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe that's an in-depth seminar at some point.
And I think you're right. No, we're going to have to do a backup webinar, whole deal.
We will.
We have time for a few more questions.
Yeah.
We have about 5 more minutes here. And we have here, it says, Moshine's asking about ransomware. So that's a security question. And
well, it's a security. That's a security question. It's really kind of a backup and recovery question. Also, it's a really good question. In my understanding, that your only protection against ransomware is, once the ransomware has gotten into your system and has access to your storage, the only thing that's going to save you is frequent, coherent backups. And so the short answer to that is you want to be running if you have a high sensitivity to that, you think you're exposed to that, then we would advise you to be running a lot of snapshots, so that you can roll it back very fast. You can automate our snapshots down to a resolution of about 1 per minute, I think.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So you can set up a recovery, a recovery time of a minute or less, depending on what your model is. But that's probably your best answer. That and lots of good practices and protection on the inbound server side.
Yeah. Here's a question about on-prem. The fiber channel deployment, does it require separate SAN switches?
No.
Cool. Short answer. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
No, it's standard fiber channel. It's fine. I mean, and then we dig in and we go, okay, well, what are the support switches? But there aren't very many fiber channel switches out there. You got Brocade, you got Cisco, maybe some QLogic out there, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, all those fine.
Cool. We have a question here about permission level controls to the data stores. This is a good question.
That is a great question.
Yeah. Go for it.
Well, one thing I want to, so permission level control to the data stores. So in the file systems, so we're presenting, for instance, in the case where we're presenting file systems to the clients on the software client data center, then you have all the permission sets available in NFS 3 or NFS 4. If you're doing it through SysMB, then you have all the versions there, and that's kind of the general answer. If you want to talk about block, then we get into one masking into discussion there, and people will start to roll their eyes back on their head. But the answer is yes. And the other thing I'd add into block, which is not exactly that question, but we do also support clustering, Microsoft clustering in all these products too. So that's a differentiator versus a standard cloud offering. Yeah,
makes sense. Tom, who asked earlier about stock, has asked another question.
He's doing some diligence now.
Yes, good. Thank you, Tom. Do software costs for antivirus and backup come with your solution, or do we need to license those separately?
That's a very good question, and the answer is that, both of those are, in fact, optional services. Mm-hmm. You can get backup from us, where we will back up directly from your file or block into an object store. That's an option. Check a box and you have a monthly charge for it. That's also true for the integrated antivirus.
Yeah, McAfee and our partner there, we're fully integrated, and so if you choose to turn that feature on, it is charged on a periodic basis, an hourly basis, right. That kind of thing.
Yeah, just what you'd expect. But I do want to make it clear that in both those cases, the backup, when you're getting the backup from us, as opposed to Veeam or Commvault, where you'd be doing your licensing with them. If you're doing our backup to object store or you're doing the antivirus, you can make that decision on a very granular basis, and those applications are running on our infrastructure. There's no dedicated servers or anything like that to do it.
Yeah, Well, we've run out of time,
but not out of questions.
Not out of questions. So let's sneak one last one in here.
All right.
From Juan Chung, it says, please clarify how you save money in a hybrid/multi-cloud environment using Zadara. Oh, well, that's actually, it's first of all, good question, and there's maybe more than we can get into here.
Yeah, you didn't pick a simple one, but like a lot of questions, the real answer is it depends.
It depends, yes.
On what you're actually trying to do. The key areas where you generally save money, let's say the structural thing, is that I would focus on the fact that you only pay for the storage that you're using. And you can compare that with almost anything else. Some people do say that they do the same thing, but they mostly don't. We do it on a much more granular basis. So it's actually down to the drive-by-drive basis. You pay for the drives you use, and you don't pay for the ones you don't. And that gives you both that smooth curve on performance as you scale, and it also gives you a lower cost because you're not paying for things you're not using.
Yeah,
that's the shortest answer. And then there's a lot more conversation behind that. And if you really want to get into it, okay, we're back. A little network thing there. If you really want to get into it, I encourage you to talk to our storage specialists about it, and they'd be happy to take you through with more focus on your specific situation.
Thank you, Mark. So, Mark, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Sharing your expertise. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We very much appreciate it. We hope that you've learned something and have enjoyed yourselves. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out. You can go to our website and reach out there. And of course, you can find more information about Zadara and all of our solutions right there on the website. We look forward to seeing you at the next webinar, and thank you again. Bye-bye.